Hello and welcome everyone to Parts Hold. We have an amazing show for you today. We have our special guest, Coach James Baumer, joins us today, and he's going to talk to us about building a best in show team. And we're going to have a couple of different conversations about Star Trek and just some other Cliff antics that you won't want to miss. All that and more coming up today on Parts Hold.
We'll be right back.
So one of my favorite things about doing podcasts, and I'm fortunate enough to be on a couple of podcasts, is that literally we can pretty much have anyone we want on the podcast.
For sure.
We worked a couple of times thinking that we could pull one of the homeless guys off the street. And that's not what happened in this case. But in this case, we got to have one of our friends come on the podcast. And I'm super excited. And I just want to tell this little story because this is Coach James, by the way, for those of you in the community that don't know Coach James. He has been one of our lead coaches now he's been with us for going on almost 3 years. And the amazing thing about Coach James is Cliff and I were talking to him and we're like, hey, we'd love to have you on the podcast. And Coach James, in true Coach James fashion, says, I don't know anything about parts. And Cliff says, that doesn't matter. We don't really know anything about parts either.
It's even better.
So he fits right into the panel here. But I thought that there was a line of questioning that I could do, James, to just kind of ease you into this. Are you ready for some of these questions?
I'm ready, Christian.
All right. So, James, let's say that you and I were on a specific starship. And that starship was the Enterprise. Are you familiar with this vessel?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when Scotty is in the control room and things go wrong, where does he go to get the stuff to fix it?
Where does he go to get the stuff to fix the Enterprise?
Yeah.
Great question.
I don't think I know the answer to that.
There's a parts room on the Enterprise. The Enterprise has a parts department.
Mm-hmm.
So what does Scotty do?
He calls them on the intercom.
Well, first he diagnoses the problem, right?
Right.
And then he calls them. Yeah.
And
He
they
calls them on the
say,
intercom.
can you hold on a second?
Yeah. And then they go to their parts catalog and they're like, oh, you need one of those. I've got two. And then what happens from there?
Well, someone would bring Scotty the parts.
Yeah. Ensign Jones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Red shirt.
Always a red shirt guy. Not a recurring role. Okay. And so Ensign Jones brings the part to Scotty. And then what does Scotty do?
He installs the part.
He installs the part.
And saves the day.
And the Enterprise doesn't explode.
And who gets all the credit?
Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
Hey, before we go any further, James, everyone that comes on the show gets a free gift.
Oh, thank you.
And so
Cliff.
we got you a gift, and feel free to open it. It's a gift just for you.
Well, careful. That's one of the gifts.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really nice.
You know, we're out here in LA, the sun. Yeah.
Especially on my head.
Yeah.
And a Parts Hold t-shirt.
Parts Hold t-shirt.
Will you sign this for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll sign this for you.
Do a lot of people ask you for your autograph?
It's happening more and more. When I got off the plane here last night, I had about 5 people ask me for my autograph as soon as I
Such a liar. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And,
Ooh, more stuff.
I mean, who doesn't need Post-it notes?
Is this what you get in the swag bag when you call another question?
Yes.
Yes.
This is good stuff.
Yeah. It's not bad, right?
Yeah.
So,
Great.
So I figured that analogy would probably make you feel more comfortable with the discussion we're going to have
Yeah.
today.
Thank you.
So, how you doing, Cliff?
I'm fantastic.
Okay. So we do 25 episodes a year, roughly.
Yeah. Sounds
And
right.
my favorite episodes are the ones where I actually get to look at you and we're not on video together.
Completely agree with that. I wish that I can make it happen more often because I enjoy doing it live. And Yeah, it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, but for whatever reason, when they made all the boundaries of the United States, North Carolina was nowhere near California,
It's on
so
the other side of the country.
we almost couldn't be further apart.
Almost, for sure.
So we're having our big quarterly meeting this week, and all the coaches come out, and then all of our clients, and we have got just an amazing lineup of just activities for the client base to do. And the highlight is that we're having Will Gadara's team, the author of the book Unreasonable Hospitality. We hired his customer experience team to come out, and they're going to be working with general managers, parts managers, and service managers about how to elevate the customer experience and really thinking about it in ways that they've never thought about it before. And what's going to happen is they're going to go back and they're going to be energized, and they're going to make big changes to the customer experience, which we all kind of know, if you want to run a really healthy business, that is what you want to do. But one of the things I think that's going to happen is that some of these people that come in for this training are going to recognize that they need to build their team. And that's kind of our topic today. And Cliff, I'll kind of let you get started on this, but the main reason we've got James on this is that he's got a few superpowers as a coach, but I would say that hands down, he's our best recruiter. Would you agree with that?
100%.
I don't know that anybody has walked into a situation and hired more people and put them in the instrumental places. There's a huge thing in our industry. I know this is a parts podcast, but everyone's pretty aware that there's a technician shortage, right, in the industry, and the parts department knows that as much as the service department. And just to give you an idea, I'm not going to completely go over James's entire resume, but he's at a Ford store and hired 9 techs in 45 days, and then hired more techs after that too. So he's hired the most difficult positions in the most difficult of places, and he just keeps doing it again and again. And I would say, and Cliff, I'm sure that you're probably going to echo this, is that if you can build a team, it doesn't matter what department it is, right? So James is going to talk a little bit about his recipe for building a team. And Cliff, I'll have you kind of start us off. When you think about a parts department, just go over what are some of like the A players, right? So what are some of the most important parts to fill?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that when I'm talking about building a winning team is not only just the structure in which we lay it out, but the amount of people. But I want to find out the right people to get them in the right spot. There's a video that we use a lot of times in masterclass. That's Nick Saban talking about getting the right people in the right seat on the right bus and getting the wrong people out of the seat and off the wrong bus. And so that's a little bit of the recipe too, in my opinion. One of the things that I think that you've done that's taught me is your ability to hire, to do it quickly, and to do it urgently. And so I've taken that away from you. So thank you for that. And the other side of that is when we're building a winning team, I want to approach it about the method in which we hire. And so I think you can help us with that. The other thing I want to talk about is what we're hiring, who we're hiring it, and the type of people we're looking for in the parts department. Because a lot of times with parts, it's a little bit different than say, staffing for a sales department or staffing for the service department or detail or any other department within the store. But staffing for the parts department, like what kind of people am I looking for? And I'd love to hear your opinion of that coming from a service side. And so one of the things that, again, I want to talk about is what's some of the things that you've used, some of the tools that you've used to hire techs and to do it urgently.
Well, I think the biggest thing is to just throw everything at the wall that you can.
Okay.
I would use stuff that didn't work for you in the past, like Craigslist or LinkedIn, like every single platform that you can. And even if it didn't work 3 years ago, it might work this week. And bring in everybody that applies. Talk to everybody, even if you think they're not specifically qualified enough for the position you're looking in. They usually will have a friend or friends that are maybe more qualified, and they'll pass the word along to them.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we get super guilty of, I know that I was super guilty of it, is we try something for a short period of time. Instead of adjusting our methodology on it, we just throw it out and say, well, it didn't work.
Right.
and never try it again.
And never try
like
it again.
that thing didn't work one time, so we'll never ever do it again.
Never take
like
the opportunity.
it's the scorned lover syndrome is what I like to call that.
The scorn lover syndrome?
Yeah. I'll never love again. You never heard this before? James, you know what I'm talking about?
We don't want to get into all that.
That's a different podcast. But yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. One thing that James is doing is he's looking at an opportunity, even if it doesn't feel like there's one on the surface, that there's also, I never even thought about that, like bring in somebody that's not qualified to see who they know.
Yeah.
That's great. What's your overall mindset when you know it's time to get into hiring mode? Like what goes through your head?
When it's time to get into it?
Yeah, like if I've assigned you to a store and you're in there, I'm going to say, okay, James, you're going to go in, you're going to hire 2 parts counter people, 1 person for the inventory control, and you're going to hire a driver, right? So I've told you, you've got to hire 5 people. So where do you start?
I'll talk to the tool truck guys. I'll talk to the food truck that comes in.
Yep.
I'll talk to current employees. I'd love hiring from within. So I'm always headed in that direction first to see if anybody else wants that job.
Well, that's great. So we're not really doing a list, but I want to kind of repeat all that stuff because it's super important. So James is what if I'm paraphrasing is that you see opportunity kind of everywhere, right? So if I've got a tool truck guy, the tool truck guy goes to 50 dealerships, and the tool truck guy, kind of like the parts department, becomes the area where people go to complain.
Absolutely.
So the tool truck guy knows who isn't happy. And so then they give that a little bit of a clue to James, and then James maybe reaches out to that person or that dealership, and then that's your opportunity. Okay. And then another thing is the same thing. The food truck or the roach coach that comes in the morning, everybody goes out and eats at the roach coach, and they have coffee talk, right? So the taco truck guy knows who isn't happy or looking around or something like that. And then I would say that this is the most preferred method. I don't know what you guys think, but I think that anytime I can do this, I am. If I can promote from within, it is ideal because I don't have to teach someone my culture. I don't have to teach someone what my leadership style is. They already know it. They're just volunteering to raise their expectations of themselves.
I always use the drivers. I hired my drivers. You know, a lot of times we hire drivers that are retirees and they come into the store. I always hired my drivers, younger ones that I wanted to move up into another position, whether that was shipping and receiving and then moving to the counter or however that path looked. But I think that's great. One thing that I wrote down that came to mind as soon as you said that is nothing else matters. When it's time to hire, nothing else matters. And, you know, we talked before on the show about being seatbelted into your office, but there is nothing else that matters when you're looking to hire. And there has to be a timer on it too, is another thing I thought about.
So I thought about that too. What do you think the average energy level of a parts manager is when they're looking for somebody?
I can only speak from experience.
Either what you've seen or your own, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I've seen out there. It's not very high level. You know, we say the same things that you just alluded to a minute ago. We can't find people.
Yeah.
So it's not a lot of energy is put into it. It's not a lot of urgency involved in it.
Yeah,
is mostly what I'm seeing.
Yeah, it's almost too easy to do the narrative of we can't find people.
Yes.
And I'll hear that here, right? And we're in Los Angeles. You guys know how many people there are in the greater metropolitan Los Angeles area?
Too many?
18 million that we know of, right? One of them wants a job.
Yeah, it would feel like that would be pretty easy to find.
Yeah. I would think it would be harder to not find someone that, to not find people in an area where there's 18 million. And then the other side of that is you also have had some success with relocating people, haven't you?
Oh, for sure.
So you've got a little bit of a recipe that you do with that. But if they're not in your immediate area, you don't let that stop you either, because you also know that there's playgrounds in other parts of the country, right?
Oh, yeah, especially seasonally. If you're in a warm climate.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, advertise in a colder area for sure.
Yeah,
that's great.
There's nothing that makes people want to move more than, after snow blowing their driveway, coming in looking at an advertisement with palm trees in it, right? That's great.
It's a tough one.
I think it's important too to stay in touch with employees that have left you.
Oh, that's
If it's on good terms, like one of the managers I see in the New York area, Anthony, shout out to Anthony, he's really good at reaching out to people after they've left. He stays in touch with them because 60 days down the line, maybe wherever they went to, they're not happy with anymore. And he gets them back that way.
Yeah, especially if the door's wide open, they were a good employee, they held the attributes you want as a company. Like, why not open them or bring it back with open arms? I love that. That's great. I think the other thing that I think about in growing it is going to tech schools and going to some of the campuses, because there's a lot of guys that realize that turning wrenches is not what they want, but they want to be in the industry.
But they love the cars and they love the business.
Yeah.
And the parts department's a great place for those people.
Absolutely. I mean, my career path started out trying to be
Professional wrestler. I mean, technician. Sorry. Go ahead.
Aside from that, I tried working at a tire store. That was the first thing I did when I got out of school, and realized rather quickly that manual labor was not going to be the life for me, that was too much work involved in that. So looked for another avenue and ended up in the parts department.
Yeah, that's great. James, as you think back through your career, who was your best hire?
I think a really talented, but their name or just describe
First
them?
name, and then tell me how we got them. Yeah.
Word of mouth for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody knew somebody that knew somebody. And I think one of the biggest things I look for when I'm interviewing somebody is somebody that I like, that I'm going to want to be around and work. Of course, the resume is important and their experiences, all that, but you want somebody that you can get along with too.
Okay.
So the most successful people I think I hired were people I felt were more like me.
So give me an example of a couple of questions you ask in that interview. Because I think there's the canned interview questions like, tell me about your experience and blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. But you're actually trying to connect with people on a deep personal level. Mm-hmm. So what kind of questions are you asking during those interviews?
I want to know about their personal life, what they're interested in, what they do outside work. All that stuff is really important to me.
And then, so for you, what were some things that you would, so the person that you hired that said you were the best hire, mm-hmm. where did you guys connect?
So before you say that, because I'm interested in this, mm-hmm. because I know a little bit about you and that mm-hmm. you're up super early in the mornings. Mm-hmm. Is that the first question you ask? Like, what time are you cooking breakfast? And then if you find out they're cooking at 3:30, you're hired.
It might not be the first question, but that is part of the conversation. Like, what time do you get up in the morning?
Well, yeah, it would make sense that you'd surround yourself with a team of morning people. Mm-hmm. Right? If they're groggy and you're ready to go by 5 a.m. and they don't get started till 1 p.m., mm-hmm. it's not a fit for your team, right?
I think for sure.
Yeah.
But I very seldom ask normal questions that they ask during an interview. I want to see their numbers. I want to see like a report that they're bringing from wherever they're at or wherever they were, mm-hmm. or a paycheck stub or something like that. But besides from that, I just want to make sure that they're a right fit for the culture. Is
there any questions that you ask that are deal breakers? Like if maybe you got through and you're like, oh, I think I like this person, but there's a question you ask and then they completely bomb it. Is it possible to bomb a question on your interviews?
Do you like Star Trek? And they say no.
I mean, I've interviewed somebody with an ankle bracelet on one time. I asked them what that was about, and that was a deal breaker. But
it was.
Do you remember that story?
We might have to hear about that off camera. Okay. We might hear about that. It's interesting.
Oh yeah, I do think that maybe not a sense of humor directly for me personally mm-hmm. But can we have fun as well as work really hard is something that's important for someone that's on my team. So I think I really identify that. I have to connect with the person.
And sometimes it takes a lot of questions to get to that point because they're nervous. They're trying to put on their best face.
You have to assume that first level of questions, mm-hmm. that's not the person you're hiring.
Right.
So you just keep working till you get through, right? Mm-hmm. Chris talks a lot about regression. Have we discussed this before?
I don't think so.
Okay. So regression is where a way to get somebody to open up is to have them start to kind of think about an earlier time period in their life. So one of his favorite interview question is, tell me about the first time you remember in your life being complimented. For me, I was first complimented about math. What was it for you?
My dashing good looks.
I like that he broke the fourth wall during that, by the way. That's pretty impressive. What about you?
What was the first question
No, the first
compliment.
The first time you ever remember being complimented or told you're really good at something.
I think in school it was probably writing.
Okay.
Yeah, writing stories.
Do you still like to write at all? Or
I do that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. What are some things that you've written? Do you write poems? Do you write music? Do you write just little stories? Journal?
I haven't written in a long time, but I've done a lot. I still have to keep a journal.
Yeah,
for sure.
But if you and I are talking about your journal, we're cutting through because now you're thinking about times when you were a kid and you're writing and all the fun and experiences that you had, right?
Yeah.
So there's a thing that if we regress people, they're more honest with us. Because actually, believe it or not, as humans, we tell more lies when we're older than when we're young. We tell the truth way more often. You have to think about that. But why do people lie in a lot of cases during interviews?
To masquerade who they are.
Because they're afraid that you won't like the person that they are.
Yeah.
So I want to take them back to where they weren't worried about who people thought they were.
Yeah. For me, it was public speaking. Was one of the first instances that I that I had somebody say, "Hey, you're really good at that."
Yeah. The cool thing is that usually the first thing we're all remember being complimented on is something that we're still pretty good at to this day.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It's funny how that works.
Fascinating. Wow, that was great. That's great. I'm looking for somebody on the part side. I'm looking for a thought process. I don't know if you can identify with that, but
unpack that a little bit though.
I'm looking for somebody who's not only analytical in a sense, but who has a thought process of being able to solve a puzzle. Because especially now in this day and time that we work in parts, it's really, really important. What did you tell me that the only thing you knew about parts when we were talking about coming on? When I said, "Hey, why don't you just do the podcast today?" What did you say? The only thing you knew?
Just don't run out of stuff.
But I'm looking for somebody who can solve a puzzle, because in this day and time, it's really difficult to come across parts and back orders and the limited on all these things and limitations. But somebody who can solve a puzzle, I know that they can solve and figure out how to find a part.
Yeah, Cliff, that's really important, because when you go to parts as a service guy and they don't have something, which should never happen, but when it does, I don't want to have to ask them to figure it out.
Right.
They just need to take that extra step and figure out how to get the part for me quickly.
Just figure it out and solve the puzzle. We've said often on this podcast many times that the answer can't be no. Like, it has to be more than just no. It's, I don't have it. And so someone who has a thought process, and you can figure that out by just having a discussion with them. It doesn't have to be some testing that's out there, although there is some good testing out there. But I can ask some questions and figure that out.
Do you think with parts you have to be really good at numbers and math? Is that important in that field?
I think that they need to be. I'm not so much sold on the fact that they have to be really good on math. Math was something I had to work at. I swore in school that I would never use math. I remember saying that very vividly, that I wasn't going to use that. And now, like, everything that the three of us do on a daily basis, Christian did a great job. Christian did a great job at Top Dog last year of opening up that everything is math. And so now I look at that after that discussion and just say, it's just a math equation. Like, I just, figuring out where to find the part, it's just math. If I got 4 places to call, then I start eliminating them, and maybe one of those 4 will have it. So I think being able to think is more important than being able to be good at math. It's no different than, we've often said it, I hired somebody because they knew the DMS. That's not as important to me. For me, when I was hiring somebody, I was looking for somebody with personality, and somebody that had good communication skills. I think those are important on the part side. So somebody that was, good at communicating, could communicate where the part was or how much it was or all those things. The other thing that I was looking at is somebody that just had a good personality. We could have another discussion some other time, but having a good personality, because the business that we're in is super important.
It seems to me that most of the parts counter people or even managers started off in shipping and receiving and working in the back, and they get promoted from within. Does that seem like the right career path?
That's the career path that I always set for the team, was moving them from maybe a delivery driver or shipping and receiving into a counter person, and then, into an assistant manager role.
Yeah.
When I was building the department, maybe they, took on certain counts that were, we were a large wholesaler, so maybe taking on certain larger accounts was super important, because if they can manage those big accounts, then they can manage other things. So yeah, great question. Yeah.
And should be the most important or the most experienced parts people, should they be front counter or parts or back counter?
I'm more inclined to have a team that can do every facet than I was having just a back counter dedicated or front counter dedicated.
Oh,
or
I like
wholesale
that.
dedicated.
So you move them around a little bit.
I moved them around. I don't know if you've ever shopped at Costco.
Yeah.
Costco does a really good job of moving their people around, and the guy that's running the register this week will be filling up the eggs next week, and so I tried to emulate that within my parts department. Always wondered how fun it would be to take a parts counter person and put them in service and put a service guy in parts.
Oh yeah.
Another conversation for another time. But
Or to reserve a bin for Costco chickens. No.
I don't even know what that means. That was great.
He's so confused.
But yeah, I think somebody that's really good and can do every aspect of it would be super important.
I love it. Well, I hope that discussion gives you guys a little something to think about, and maybe a couple of ideas about just how much effort you're putting into your recruiting, and that the thing that I would tell you is that it's pretty rare that we'll talk to the best of the best and the highest performers where they won't defer credit to their team and say they had an amazing team. So it's really hard to be the best without having the best team.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. And James, thank you so much for being on. You're all worried, and I think you added a ton to the discussion, which is really cool. So we're going to let him put his swag on, and we'll see you next time on Parts Hold.
Here to fill the order.